The realm of symphonic metal is an interesting one. It's one that could actually go beyond what we've traditionally seen from the genre. However, it's one that paints and presents a certain style, a certain format. It's one that tends to have a little bit more composition behind it. And Epica is a band that has been seen throughout their run as one of the forerunners of one of the better symphonic metal bands that we have seen throughout the latter 2000s and here throughout the 2010s. They return with their album, The Holographic Principle. What I really find interesting about symphonic metal is the fact that whenever you hear some of this work, whenever you are able to sort of dissect some of the compositions, symphonic metal could easily have a realm of cinematic metal to them as well, considering there are some compositions that feel that they could easily be the backdrops of epic movies. You know, the films that perhaps you would want to watch during a weekend because there's a trilogy or a sextuple of them, whatever it may be. Personally speaking, the first time that I listened to this album, it was clear. However, in subsequent playbacks, I was actually reading a novel, and that's this one right here, The Gardens of the Moon by Stephen Erickson, which is the first book of the Malazan Book of the Fallen series, which actually gave us the band Caladan Brood. What's interesting is that I could easily see some of the compositions Epica has been able to give us within the Holographic Principle working in a version of this film that if it were to be placed for theaters. Just simply the way in which some of these have this tone of almost epic fantasy, even though this is an album that really takes a lot of its shape from the idea of the universe being a hologram, and that has a very futuristic paint to it. It's one that easily, within the compositional realm, could be sort of backdrafted to one that does not really shape the same real technological advance that we see and really expect within this time. This is something that's really cool and is really evidenced by some of the earliest tracks on this album, such as Edge of the Blade going into a Phantasmic Parade, even into Universal Death Squad, something that easily can coincide with some of the themes not only presented in that book, but also presented within the philosophy in general. It's very cool, and I like that, and I like the fact that this sort of swirls around, and that swirling process is all centralized in Simone's vocals, and really Simone's really coupling along with Mark's growls that you occasionally get, the leads that you hear from Isaac. It's something that just continues to build and build very strongly. Now, what makes this album by Epica different than the ones of the past? And really, I think one of the stronger arguments that could be made for this disc is in its compositional integrity. It's in really the structure and sort of the maturity that we have gotten from this band throughout the years. They've definitely been a career that whenever they first came through really delivered some very powerful albums that also surged upward expectations, and those expectations have been both met and also disappointed in recent years. This is an album where those expectations have been met, and met very well, considering the consistency of these songs are also really sort of magnified by the fact that it's very good material to boot, almost as though they've reached that songwriting plateau that I've been speaking about for years, where a band is able to get within a very comfortable place within their own songwriting prowess, and as a result, most of what they write tends to be above average, if not borderline exceptional, and Epica has been able to do that with this album in some locations. Really, the aforementioned Universal Death Squad is a track that we have gotten prior to the release of this disc, but it's also one that showcases it on the early get-go very well. It's one that swirls and has a very nice touch added to its chorus, and it kind of builds the overall philosophy of this track a little bit further. The percussion really is able to really nicely boost up all of the moments that you gain from the keys, not to mention also the guitar work, and basically whenever you hear vocals is just adding to the fold, granting a near-perfect experience for those that are fans of this style of music. You really start to understand with a track such as Universal Death Squad exactly why this style of metal is not only beloved by some, but revered by many. It's definitely got a charm to it. And it's a charm that continues further. What's nice about this album is that they don't go to that 6.5 minute realm and decide just to careen back into a comfortable 4.5 minute setting. Instead, they go one step further with the very next track, Divide and Conquer, nearly touching the 8-minute barrier. With that being said, this is a track that really showcases a little bit more of that battle-hardened philosophy that you get within symphonic metal, which perhaps is the reason why some of the other contemporaries of the genre tend to go the high fantasy route with some of their lyricism, attempting to really build not only a theme, but tell a story. This is music that definitely has a little bit of that capability really within it, even though that's not this band's traditional bread and butter, to use a very old adage and make it quite new. So, moving on to the second half of this album, we are met with yet another really big moment that this disc has been able to give to us, and that's Once Upon a Nightmare. From the lyrical theme to the overall sort of sinister, almost eerie atmosphere that you're granted. Simone's vocals very tight on this one, really delivering a very strong performance in its wake. It's one that definitely gives side B an instant boosting point. And if you're wondering what that means between side A and side B, I would cut this one in half. 1 through 6 is side A, 7 through 12 being side B. Yes, I understand that there are bonus tracks abound that have a bunch of, this and that above it. I'm going with the standard 12-track affair here, considering that's the album as they wish to present it. But Once Upon a Nightmare definitely presents as a early side B highlight, and its 7 minutes are well spent in really delivering top-notch material. But then you get into Ascension, which is also, secondly, parted by Dream State Armageddon, and you start to notice some of the themology that you get here, some of the deeper thinking that occurs, and some of the more futuristic endeavors that perhaps swirl here, that are intermingled among some of the philosophies that the lyricism really are able to present. And you start to note that they work very well within the confines of Epica's musical output. They're nice touches that they're able to deliver. And by this point, the band's overall songwriting ability is becoming a bit more familiarized to you, but they're giving you enough variety. They're giving you enough, pace differential. They're giving you enough of a taste of the wide expansiveness of their palette in order to really deliver an album that keeps you guessing a little bit. Even upon second and tertiary listens, you still do guess a little bit, considering, despite knowing what was coming, there are still things that you discover along the way. And that's the side of an album that's going to be easy to really return to, because it has that sort of, charm that's interwoven within its melody and interwoven within its overall flow. And the flow on this album is very smooth. That's probably the highlight, or the number one real positive charm value that this album has going for it. Its flow is majestic throughout its 12 tracks, and they even leave their longest track for last in the Holographic Principle, a title track that also has the surname of A Profound Understanding of Reality. And let me tell you, at 11 minutes and 35 seconds, if that's a profound understanding of reality, our reality is extremely short-sighted. It's really just the same length of time of an episode of a cartoon like Doug or the Rugrats. Oh shit. But at any rate, this is one that starts off and builds its philosophy very, very slowly. It's a slow burn to begin this finale of the album, and once it does boost up and get itself to its real legwork, whenever it really gets to its true magnificence points, it's one that really is, it provides something memorable to go home by. And Epica really understands this philosophy, understands this idea of leaving your audience with something to remember upon leaving their album, and they do that. This is a significant track. This is one that ends it with a lot of real sheer power, and once again, like we've spoken with other songs on this disc, kind of gives you that full gamut of what they are able to present. It really gives you all of their tools in one track and delivers it in a nicely cohesive fashion. It's not linear by any regard, but it is also not a complex maze that leaves you guessing. It's instead one that feels very much straightforwardly presented and delivered to you. That way you can consume it easily. So what does this album really behold for us? How are we able to really score such a stage of this band's career? And I think the only way that you can is peering into what we have been given. We've been given a strong 12-pack of songs. We've been given a great philosophy, not to mention an excellent flow, which is one that makes it simple to sit down and listen to this disc despite its length, which does push the 71-minute mark. So based around that, an album that's able to keep your attention, maintain it, and also keep you sort of gripped a little bit for that length of time is certainly a marvel to behold. That being said, this is still an album that showcases that Epica still has some polish that they're offering their songs. They are still delivering some excellent moments in spurts, but also still trying to dream up some new tricks. It's one I would give an 89 out of 100 to. This is one that shines and shimmers in proper locations, but it also has a slow burn at times, which is sometimes all that you need in order to really deliver a truly balanced performance, which I do feel that this album is able to present. But I want to know what you guys think about the holographic principle. I know many of you were clamoring for me to speak about this, and many of you were hoping that it would come sooner rather than later. I hope that that has been satisfied. My name is coverkillernation. I await your comments in the proper section below. I will talk to each and every one of you guys next time. We have a big weekend ahead of us, so I hope that you'll stay tuned for one. And for two, if this is your first experience, I hope that it was a good one and that you'll decide to subscribe and come on board for future journeys. Thanks once again, and have an excellent evening. Take care.